Welcome to the GMS Magazine, everyone. I am Paco Garcia, your host, and
this is Chris from DSX Machina. How are you?
I'm fine. But before that, before we say any of that, I need to tell people that this is a podcast all about role-playing games, board games, and the people who make them. Sometimes the people who play them, but only sometimes. I mean, like every time, but sometimes. So anyway, I'm fine. I'm pretty good. I just had dinner. Which is excellent because if I don't, then I get all cranky.
And I just had lunch.
Wow.
Speaking of, you should have a surprise, but it may take a couple weeks to get there.
Okay.
I sent you crackers a couple weeks ago, but knowing shipping, it may take 4 to 6 weeks to get there. Yes.
I'm going
finally
to do an unboxing of crackers.
Oh, God. It'll be like squished. You'll be dipping the bag back to get the crumbs.
Okay. Oh, sorry, I need to cough. Excuse me a second, humans. So anyway, we have a few things to talk about. I only have one piece of news that made me super duper happy over the last few days. And is that I don't know exactly the name, TSR hobby museum store shop that had nothing to do with TSR, wasn't a museum, and was on sale for 5 million not long ago at all. And it is run by Justin Lasagna, who had the audacity to claim that pretty much they had invented D&D or something in those lines, something that level of stupid, and eventually were sued by Wizards of the Coast, probably for no better reason than they are an absolute bunch of idiots. So Wizards sued them just for being fucking stupid. And now they have closed down, and I am begging to all the gods in every pantheon on the planet that we never, ever, ever hear from them ever again.
Yeah. So the museum and all the associated, they have shut down operations. I was trying to find more information about it, but all we know is the fact that they have closed down operations, which is tragic. God, it's
oh my God,
so tragic.
Look at my hand of tragicness on my forehead. It's terrible, terrible, I tell you. So that's the only thing I have. There's also been some sort of controversy with the Gen Con Writers Symposium, but I don't think I want to talk about that much at the moment because I've tried to unravel everything, and I'm going to try to find somebody to talk to about that. That will be
well, the one link you sent me, the Eric Scott one, he definitely seems to have a more measured response, but quite simply, this is a very ugly situation for those people who need a quick rundown. Basically, Gen Con, Gen Con runs this writer symposium during their event, and it was run by an external organization, and the founding members of that organization were told they will not be returning back. And this turned into a kind of almost a one-sided war, where the people that were supposedly wronged made claims about the motivations behind Gen Con's attitude. Then the post you sent me basically expanded on it, said it's a much more complicated situation. There were issues on both sides. Unfortunately, as I've said, the only information that I found online on YouTube was, of course, right-wing trolls celebrating it, saying that they've fired all the woke people at the Writer Symposium. And so now I'm hoping that Gen Con organizers, they make a post discussing their side of the situation, because if they sit it there on their one side, then you have people defending them, but they are not themselves defending themselves, and they probably think it's best to avoid it. But when you have these right-wings trolls claiming that Gen Con is on their side, I think it looks badly on them unless they come up to publicly denounce what could be an incorrect narrative.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, like, as I said, I don't really want to give any other details that I think I know, because I've read both Eric's article and the statement of the people who've been fired. But I haven't read anything from Gen Con themselves, so I don't know. But one of the things apparently that was a matter of dispute is that they wanted to have a diverse cast of people at the panel, and only 2 people were allowed to come, but they wanted 4 to make it more.
So the story that they gave them a certain fixed budget with the expectation that they were going to get 3 to 4 guests. Gen Con apparently on their side said they wanted to have have a diverse group of guests, and then the writer symposium apparently brought 2, and then earmarked the remaining money for all the other administration stuff that they do. Gen Con apparently didn't really like this and felt that their money was not being used correctly, and the organizers then threw it back in their faces and on their podcasts, or on their podcasts, but on their blogs and posts, and as well as Discord, claiming that Gen Con fired them because of their inclusivity, which does not really.
No. And to be honest, I mean, I don't know everybody involved in running Gen Con, okay, but I know Peter Atkinson, and I'm sorry, I refuse to believe that he would have any issues whatsoever with inclusivity and diversity in a panel at Gen Con. I mean, we are talking about a convention that has allowed for years to have a panel called Queer as a 13th Sided Die.
Yeah.
So, no, I'm sorry. No, and I'm sorry. I know Peter from Facebook well enough to know that he's not that kind of person. So, no.
Yeah, so I'm waiting for Gen Con to make an official statement. But for those people interested, Eric Scott DeBay, speculative science fiction author, game designer, he wrote something on September 12th, Writer's Symposium Incident. It's a very long read, so that's why we're not going to go into in detail here. Read through it, get your own opinions, and please comment on them below. Let us know what your thoughts are on the situation.
Yes.
But I definitely think it's complex, and I really hope Gen Con makes a public statement, at the very least denouncing this narrative that they are gone anti-woke, which I don't believe is the actual situation.
That's bullshit. That's bullshit.
So that is your second piece. Obviously, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about NaNoWriMo's position on artificial intelligence.
Yes.
And it's the quote that was sent to me specifically, which we also want to be clear in our belief that the categorical condemnation of AI has classist and ableist undertones, and that questions around the use of AI tied to questions around privilege. Now, I have made statements about the fact that I think a lot of the people who hate on AI are doing it as a reflex action. I think there is, as someone who's been around technology, who was raised around technology, who was quite literally a salesman of technology for 40 years, or 30 years, it's upsetting sometimes that people make a lot of knee-jerk reactions. There was a conversation. I was thinking of inviting Matt Francella, I think it's Francella, who's a cartographer who is very much on as a first line attack, in the war against AI, but specifically through cartography. And I made a comment that I legitimately have no idea how to tell. I can spot an AI image pretty easily. I'll be honest. I can spot AI writing, which I think a lot of people can't do. Just because of certain patterns and keywords that I can no longer use in my vernacular, because now I automatically think it's AI. Even if I wrote it, I'm like, oh, I just duplicated an AI. I got to delete this sentence, and that's kind of makes it a bad situation for us. But I said, I have no clue what constitutes you can have an AI generate a map, and the few times I played with it, this is worthless. This has absolutely no bearing. So I almost want to ask them, what is an AI map? Is it just taking actually like, because there are websites where you can build dungeon maps, right? You can just assemble them as tiles and render a dungeon map. And I think that's fascinating. And there are tons of people who use it, but as a result, there are a lot of people who are professional cartographers who are kind of accusing those as being part of the problem. And I'm like, okay, is that an AI map, or is it an AI map you generate? But from my perspective, those don't look any good. So I don't know how to tell what an AI map is or what counts as an AI map. And that's been his fight. So it's the fight with AI is still happening. And then before I get your comment, I'll say this will swing into our D&D conversation, because that will also hit the news recently.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I don't know, because I haven't seen any of those maps. So I don't know. And because my beef with AI is not with the technology itself at all.
Yeah.
It is with the way that it has been trained and the damage that it is doing to people, and about the ethical frame surrounding AI. All these gray areas are too much. But the thing that bugs me the most about the use of AI is how much anxiety, how much suffering is causing on real human beings that personally I value considerably more than any technology that can provide any kind of imagery. So, but again, I don't know what these maps look like. I don't know where the database that's being used to train it come from. I don't know the legalities behind it. So I don't think I can have a firm opinion. So on this one, I need to take a rain check.
Yeah, that's like, for me, that's been an issue that because we talk about the fact that Grammarly is an AI system, and obviously we've seen the ethical use of AI within the scientific field and so forth, but and that kind of comes down to I've noticed a few posts now talking, and they've been using. They've been saying we're rallying against the use of LLMs. They're trying to steer away from saying the blanket term AI, because they know that is creating, it's kind of the same issue when you talk about global warming compared to climate change. Global warming worked for a long time, but people were just like, well, I don't understand that. So now we use, in the last 20 or so years, the term climate change, which is more accurate, has been more accepted. But it was global warming for 20 years, from the 80s into the late 90s, all the way into Al Gore's special. But not long after Al Gore's special, we started to rebrand it. And now I'm saying that people say, well, we can't say AI because there's too many ethical uses of AI. And there's also things where AI is doing something quite despicable, but it's not doing what, like the way AI is analyzing stock market, the way it's doing that. It's not the large language model. People are talking about what we have an issue with are the large language model training systems, which is what you were just talking about, which is what we see with ChatGPT and AI, and now we're seeing it with music as well. My issue is I still feel personally that the volume on ChatGPT isn't being turned up. I think the problem with this system is that ChatGPT is getting so ubiquitous in our society, and so many people use it. Like when people talk about the evils of AI imagery, ChatGPT's user base dwarfs all other programs.
Yep.
And it's become so ubiquitous and so popular and so used. Both people are just saying, nope, you're not going to win that fight. So we're just going to go after the music and the art. And I'm like, well, yeah, but for us writers, you're basically telling us that our fight is over.
And I think that is the other reason why I don't like the current AI or LMMs or whatever you want to call it, scene. Yeah. And is that it doesn't address the true problems, or the problems that are truly huge, like what you just described. Whether we like to think about it this way or not everybody paints, draws, composes music, or has any interest in doing so. But everybody writes at some level or another Everyone writes, whether it is because we do it for work, because you're a writer, because you write letters or emails to people or posts in social media. Everyone at the level or another that uses a computer has to write something. So as you said, the user base for writing AIs is ginormously bigger. We are not looking into that, but not just because of the writers. We are not looking into that because, to give you an example, and I'm going to use, which is something that is not happening, okay? I want to stress this, but in my company that I work on, my day job, we do an awful lot of, I don't know how to, the word in English is licitaciones, which is when you present a bid to get a public contract.
Yes.
Okay. If we were using AI, we could be doing those 5 times faster. Literally 5 times faster. We are not doing that yet because of confidentiality issues and because it's just too risky for us. But it would be. So it would put an awful lot of people's jobs in jeopardy. That is what I care about. That for me is a big deal, and that we are not looking into. We are talking about artists, yes, and that is very valid, and that is absolutely something that we need to think about and fight. But make no mistake, the number of artists who will lose their jobs because of generative imaging is a fraction of the clerk and office people who will lose their jobs because of writing. And that is a much, much bigger problem.
I always love the irony of the film Her, which is a film about AI. Scarlett Johansson played the voice of an AI that Joaquin Phoenix falls in love with. And in the story, his day job is writing letters for people that don't want to write letters for themselves. And the irony, of course, is that we haven't found her as a real life analog yet, but his job has already been completely removed from society. Did you hear the story about the musician? I say loose terms. He's a musician that wasn't getting much success. So he created dozens, if not hundreds, of AI artists on Spotify, created hundreds of AI songs, and then created hundreds of bots to listen to those songs constantly. And he generated from Spotify. And this is the reason why it's hard for me to hate him, because all he's doing is stealing money from a corrupt corporation like Spotify to the tune of $10 million. And he did this only through the use of bots and AI music and generative content. He basically milked the system. I'm actually almost upset that he got caught, but that shows you how the fight is real. And that'll spin us into the Wizards of the Coast story. The Wizards of the Coast had, we always had this issue with what the CEO says and then the company's policy. And we had this recently with Evil Genius Games that were talking about their AI policy, and then the CEO goes to a Bitcoin conference and talks about all the stuff they want to do, despite their company's position being the fact that they weren't going to be employing blockchain technology. And then he goes to a symposium talking about all the stuff that they have, and he wins an award, and there's a video for it, and everyone's just like, you can't have both. And so with Hasbro, they had a policy that they will not be employing artificial intelligence in their stuff. I'm going to be taking a look. Of course, so we had controversies with people accusing them of using AI, and then the artists had to come up and defend and say, no, that's a legit piece of artwork. But then at the same time, their CEO talks about how they plan on embracing artificial intelligence. But once again, people go, well, that's a conflict. I go, well, no, wait a second. He's just saying they're not going to use generated artwork within their books. He didn't say that they weren't going to employ AI in some capacity. And that goes into that trigger word of AI. When someone's like, we've been using, we let our writers use Grammarly. That's an AI system. We're not using an AI LLM to create images. We're not doing that. But he talks about There's not a single person who doesn't use AI somehow for either campaign development or character, in reference to his play group of 30 or 40 people regularly, which I love. I was like, oh my God, how in the world? I guess only a CEO of Hasbro could have a game group of 30 or 40 people. Like, what the hell? And he says, there's a clear signal we need to be embracing it. And basically his implication saying, no matter how controversial large language models are when it comes to trying to disenfranchise writers and artists, it is clear that their consumer base wants these engines. And so there's a conflict of interest. This is according to him. He's saying the fact that from their perspective, their audience wants these systems employed, which comes in the same way that Google and Apple, all of their corporate announcements have been entirely centered on how much they're embracing AI, even though nobody wants it. They go to Google, and Google now implements their AI, and everyone hates it. But
okay, but there's one thing about that. Okay, and to kind of do this quickly, because we've been at it for 20 minutes, and we've said that we were going to do this in smaller chunks, and we are failing.
Well, we have. I mean, we've gone through. We've done 4 different pieces of news. They just happen to be all related.
I know, but anyway, firstly, I'm going to say something that it's perhaps going to be, people are going to be upset that I say this, but I wouldn't be surprised if he were right. Okay? And the reason I say this, yes, we personally hear an awful lot of people against AI and blah, blah, blah. But when a company came to Kickstarter to kickstart a very, very popular board game second edition with hundreds of AI images, that had zero negative impact on their campaign. Zero. Overall, people didn't give a shit.
You're referring about Terraforming Mars?
Yes. And I'm going to say something else also very controversial. The only reason that people are unhappy with Google's AI is because it's rubbish. But
yeah, that's not very good.
If it had worked, if instead of recommending glue to keep pizza together, had recommended to actually powder the cheese so it binds everything better, which it wouldn't work either, for the record, but it would make more sense, okay? People wouldn't be laughing at them so bad. We have been against an awful lot of Google's AI because it doesn't work. But if it had, I'm sorry, but mostly it would have gone, yeah, it's been implemented. Get over it. So I think that he's probably right, that the majority, the overwhelming majority of people, the silent majority who's not in our radar within social media, they probably would be happy with AI if it works.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say, but I reckon that if a GM could rely on a system where he says, oh, remind me of so-and-so and generate a combat situation, and then you get all the scene done, so you don't have to improvise everything 100%, and it is perfectly adaptable and, you know, perfectly workable for your table, people won't be complaining about that, regardless of whether it is AI or magic. They won't care. So from that point of view, I find absolutely abhorrent what he wants to do. I am glad that I released my video a few weeks ago about me giving up on D&D, because I can't be asked anymore. But I reckon that he probably is more right than we would like him to be.
So with that, we can talk about D&D. I don't know if you want to put a gap, a little pregnant pause if we talk about D&D.
Yes, let's do that. Okay, so let's talk about D&D. Let's talk about, you wanted to talk about this because the Player's Handbook has seen the light of Day.
Yes,
This week. I haven't seen it yet. So I mean, I don't know anybody who's bought it. So.
Well, because it doesn't ship officially for another day or two. I will get my copy on Thursday. So basically, the moment Amazon releases the book, it gets sent out in the mail. So I'm expected to get mine on Thursday. I think the official release date is Wednesday. So it's about that time. Around the same time, my games show up in distribution. I find that humorous. So yes, now it should be noted that if you were at Gen Con, a bunch of people at Gen Con got preview copies early. Mm-hmm. So basically, if you have, if you talk about D&D and you've got more than 4,000 or 5,000 people, subscribers on your YouTube, you basically got a copy of this game. So there's a couple dozen I found of people online. They're doing D&D people that are giving out reviews and screenings, and their videos range from 10 minutes to 3 hours when they go into deep dives. I've seen the short ones. I'm going to see the book for myself so I can read through it myself. And this was a huge conversation topic for an interview that got posted this week on our channel, which was Faith Elizabeth Lilly, who is coming out with a system called World Tree, which is a kind of a different way of looking at a VTT and community-based online gaming. And there's a couple of things that happened from the course of that interview, which made me feel a lot better. And then when I was doing research, the first thing is there are still people who insist on calling it 5.5. There are still people who want to calling it 6th edition. Just call it 6th edition. Not that now that rules have been coming out more often, the idea of calling it 6th edition is no longer accurate. It's not even close. I would even range to say it's barely even 5.5. It's closer to 5.25. I don't really, because ultimately, and this is the one thing that I found out talking with people and also looking at these videos, the biggest shock about this book is how little actually changed. The book is quite large. It's the largest player's handbook that they've made up to this point. The book has primarily been written to attract new gamers. So someone says, do I need this book? And some people said, if you play D&D and you are faithfully play D&D, you may not need to even buy this book, because the thing about the 2024, they want to call it D&D 2024. And then people are saying, we're just going to call it 5.5. And eventually at some point, someone's going to win that argument. I don't really like calling editions by their year. It's like when they used to say something was 2000. I'm like, yeah, well, that was 25 years ago. It was in the future when it was in the 80s. And now, I remember watching a show.
It's given them an element of obsolescence that it really doesn't age very well.
So calling it D&D 2024, which is what their desire is that it spends a good chunk of its rules, of its initial page count, teaching people what D&D is in a way that hasn't been before, by going into huge, huge details. And the person said, if you're a GM, you can skip this book because it's not telling you in any way how to play. The rules are exactly the same. All it's done was give more variety to player usage. Now, that's not exactly true. There are certain things which I feel is, if you're a game designer, you have to be aware of. These are things that I've been, I don't say aware of, but cognizantly interested in doing to D&D. The first one is they have pushed, obviously races are gone. The idea of races have been removed. We have now species. Now, it should be noted that I have been playing around with calling it species and origin for the last part of 4 or 5 years. So it's been something that has been basically embraced by the community anyway. D&D is basically just finally jumping on the bandwagon. They have removed the ability to score bonuses from species and put it to backgrounds. I have also done this, but I actually do it both. I say basically you can get your ability score bonus from your species selection or for your background selection. You can't have both, but you get to choose which one. They are putting it entirely in the background option, which I think, once again, if they want to give people more variety, give them that variety to choose between species, biological benefits, and cultural, discipline benefits, which is from your background. However, they have drastically trimmed what backgrounds are. They want to give people a lot of backgrounds, but they then removed a lot of the eccentricities of backgrounds. For example, you remember these would say like motivation, your idol, what you cherish, all those tables that backgrounds have, all gone. Background entries are now way smaller.
Okay.
And species selection is not nearly as important as they used to. But they also give all players a feat at first level, which are called origin feats. So in my opinion, what they have done, they've taken the, I'll say for ease of sakes, the race, background, and the race and background selection, and then they split it and move some things around. So now you get to have complete variety. So you can pick your background gives you stuff, your feat gives you stuff, and your race gives you stuff. In the old days, you would probably get all of that from those 2 selections. Now you get it from 3 selections, which gives you a lot more variety. Now, it should be noted that the question is, does that make first level characters slightly more powerful? And I do believe the consensus is yes. I think first level characters are just marginally more powerful at first level, which is hilarious because I used to make a disclaimer that my ultramodern game, the characters were slightly more powerful at first level than fantasy. So if this is true, then it's entirely possible that ultramodern, by a complete side effect, has now balanced itself with D&D 2024. So someone says, hey, in your game, you say if you don't use the ladder system in ultramodern for your fantasy characters, then no one should use ladders. And I'm thinking, no, go ahead now, because you can intermix ladders left and right, because that origin feat is the same as your ladder first level ability, which means they balance each other out, which is great, because I was always worrying that D&D 2024 would render ultramodern obsolete. It might actually have made ultramodern more topical. And then they have classes, and in classes they have exploded. The classes are huge when it comes to your variety. 4 subclasses now, a lot more variety. The spell chapter somehow has managed to get even larger. They have added so many new spells, because remember, they have Tasha's and Guide of Everything, Xanthos Guide of Everything. They've taken all the best bits of those books and dropped them in the 2024 book. So not only does it have way more spells than you should ever possibly need, it also has a bunch of monsters and a bunch of that as well. With people saying the problem is that players will generally go with what they know. So if you're an experienced player, you're like, no, I'm just going to do my two weapon fighting. I'm going to grab my weapons and I'm going to go into the game. So when one reviewer is like, yeah, you got so much variety, but at the end of the day, you're going to build a character that's going to be a singular defined character for who you are. You're going to pick your abilities, which means if you come to the session, yeah, your fighter might be slightly different than that fighter, but at the end of the day, you're doing the same damage value, the same amount of dice, and the GM doesn't really need to worry about it. My worry is that sometimes a GM is a bit of a referee, and he usually has to be so experienced in players, he has to be able to spot when a player is cheating. And one of the things I got annoyed with playing certain tabletop games is that there were so many customized rules that I couldn't catch my opponent's player cheating by saying you couldn't do that because I know that system. But now there's so much variety, it's impossible to catch them in a lie. So that might be an issue with dungeon masters, where I say to them, like, you know what, don't worry about players tweaking the rules. If they want to do it, let the other players referee them.
But that's the thing, and I'm going to intercede in there. One of the reasons why I stopped playing D&D with my group is that because they were completely new to D&D, they had massive problems getting to grips with the amount of data that they had to process. Like spells, for instance, and how many rules. And because the adventure that we were playing, which was the Dragonlance, you advanced very quickly. They literally didn't have from 1 week to the next enough time to see and take a look at all the spells that they could use with and for their characters. If this new player's handbook has even more spells, there's going to be an overload of people who will become completely and utterly overwhelmed by that level of information. And as you said, they're just going to go for the 5-6 basic spells that they're going to be able to remember very quickly, and that's going to be it. So I don't understand the trend of more is more. No, I'm sorry, but less is less. And again, I get the feeling that the character creation, because they have given so much variety, they've also complicated it a lot more, because before you could choose one background and that, as you said, they give you everything you need to know. You don't have to worry. Now you have to learn everything, read everything, understand everything, so you know exactly what kind of character you want to make. To me, that's not attractive. I don't have time to do all those things anymore. So
I worry that you're right. That was like when I was doing 4th edition stuff, I was getting criticized for giving people too much variety, too much freedom. And Ultramodern has also been accused of being overly complex because it offers too much freedom. I go, well, is that the lesson that Hasbro has learned in making the largest player's handbook that they've made? I'll know for certain on Thursday when I get through and I flip through it. Now, from my perspective, there are a few things. Like I said, there are origin feats, so everyone gets a feat. The human is now the variant human, which I think is in one of the off books. The human has been changed, so it's now a different type of version of human. That's fine. And then we have these origin feats that everybody gets. There's more variety in ability score benefits. So so there's definitely they've tweaked, but ultimately I think the classes when you have a first level character, your hit points will still be the same. If monsters come out and they are fundamentally mechanically different, that's the only thing that's going to worry me, is that they'll come out with a mechanically different way. Because they did that with 4th edition. People don't realize that 4th edition came out with a new set of how monsters worked right near the end of 4th edition's life, when they were trying to retweak 4th edition to be a bit more acceptable. They came out with the Essentials, which basically turned 4th edition into a 3rd edition, 4th edition hybrid. I actually thought it was really good, but a lot of people hated it. And around that same time, they came out with Monster Manual, I think it was 3. And they actually went and changed how monsters worked. They played around with how the numbers looked. They tweaked it around. It was still mechanically the same, but they presented them differently. And I'm really worried that they're going to try to create a situation where they're going to present monsters differently in order to create things where people are going to get used to the 2024 visual style. And when they see a 5e style, they may go, well, I don't understand. This is not presented the way. And the hilarious thing is that the monsters presented in Monster Manual 3 for 4th edition were easier to understand. But by then, it was just too late. The other big thing with with the 2024 Player's Handbook is it apparently is beautiful. It is the nicest looking book that Hasbro has ever published. It has more artwork and more color artwork than has ever been seen. Some people have actually criticized, saying this book is so beautiful, it's almost got too much. Like every class gets a full page illustration. Backgrounds have full illustrations. It's so pretty. Without some people criticizing that the images some of them look very digital, that they don't really have a look of being an illustration. And there's even some that they have an almost Norman Rockwell type of appearance, where you're seeing people around a dinner table eating dinner and stuff like that. And someone's just like, well, I want the illustrations to be bombastic and creative and destructive. And I'm like, well, no, an illustration is an illustration. If it conveys an idea, I don't care what it is. So I'll be really looking forward to seeing how pretty this game is. And I'm hoping people don't think that that's the baseline for all games to follow, because we used to have that when 3rd edition came out. A lot of games felt they had to up their budgets to make their games look as good as the 3.5 books. And then we saw a rash of beautiful looking role-playing games that were making a lot of money, but then a whole bunch of companies went out of business because the art budgets were insane.
I think they've missed out on an opportunity to call it D&DDE. They should have called, judging for what you're saying with how beautiful it is, I think they should just call this thing Dungeons and Dragons Definitive Edition.
Yeah.
This is it. This is the pinnacle of what D&D can produce. And the next D&D in another 15, 20 years' time will be something completely different. So everyone has time to prepare for the next edition's war, which I reckon this time is not going to happen.
Well, I find you actually hit the nail on the head with that, because if this version of D&D is now, like, by putting out a version that is simply a 5th edition with more bells and whistles and more options, they've basically kicked the bucket down another 7 or 8 years before they could do an actual 6th edition. Because they're still calling this 5th edition, just 5th edition 2024. They're saying the rules, And people have stressed who read that this is 100% backwards compatible. The rules, you can have characters from 5.5 and 5th edition together, and you wouldn't notice the difference. And if that's true, that means we're not going to see a 6th edition until probably 2030, because obviously they're going to try to keep this going this way for a while. And supposedly, when the Monster Manual comes out next year, DMG comes out in November, Monster Manual comes out next year, they are going to be adding in the majority of the content from the Player's Handbook into the Creative Commons rules, supposedly. Somebody was saying that they have plans to do that, which means if you're like, oh, do I want to buy this DMG? I go, well, won't matter. It's going to hit Creative Commons in about 6 months. And the other thing I thought was interesting, and this is something else I'm going to comment, which is a bit upsetting, is how cheap this game is.
How you mean? How much is the book?
Well, in US prices, it's $49. Right now, the Canadian price is on sale for $56. It's about $16 off.
That's weird. I thought they were going to put the prices up. They were going to sell this for $60 American, US dollars.
It is, yeah, 55 Canadian, 49 US for a 380, 300. I don't know. It's in the 300. It's in the mid 300s. It should be noted that my game, which is about the same length, it's a bigger. My most successful game with Ultramodern is $10 over. No, it's $15 more expensive. So that's the other thing. People are going to look like, well, why your game is so expensive? But the Player's Handbook is $49. I go, I would imagine that beyond the fact that they've probably are doing a 20 million print run with their printer.
Exactly. I was going to say, if you could print a couple of million books, I bet you could lower the price considerably.
Yeah, you can do that. And considering with their art budgets and all that, they're probably only making $1. They're making very little per purchase, because they're for them, it's about trying to get more people into D&D, and they're doing that by throwing everything to the stick, which brings up talking about the other thing, which Sigil. Sigil is their...
Wait a second. Wait, stop. Because we've been 15 minutes talking about this, let's jump on Sigil on the next part of the podcast.
Okay.
Okay, let's talk. In that case, let's talk about Sigil. We've spoken about how D&D is doing some very weird thing with this D&D 2024, but Sigil, I'm interested in that because you mentioned that it is the most beautiful VTT ever, and I can't be bothered to even look at it. So tell me about it.
So the thing about Sigil is, there has been talk, and this is the conversation point. Once again, watch the interview with Faith Elizabeth Lilly on this channel, and we talk about World Tree and how World Tree is going to be, it's a different way of approaching. It's going to be multiple systems, multiple platforms. It's going to be a subscription-based service where you have access to every system. It's not about buying, I got to buy this module, got to buy this module. It's got some wonderful ideas. We're going to probably see more about it as they get closer to their Kickstarter launch. We'll talk about more about that later. So the ultimate question came in, how do you compete with what Sigil is? And Sigil, for those people who don't know, is is Wizards of the Coast, a virtual tabletop. It uses the Unreal Engine in creating virtual minis that look like they're minis. You can basically move through your dungeons. You can zoom out. It is by far the best looking dungeon delving map system out there. The revelation in my interview with Faith was that it's not actually made for us.
What?
It's not made for you. It's not made for me. It's not made for anybody who listens to this podcast. Anybody who subscribes to any of the major D&D YouTube channels. Sigil is not for you.
Okay.
If you're on Roll20, if you're on Fantasy Grounds, if you are on Foundry, and you have subscriptions to those services, if you have a shelf, which you can't see, if you have a shelf of role-playing game books, if you have physical copies, Sigil is not for you. Sigil is a video game.
Okay.
It is being built as a video game. It is being presented as a video game. It is being sold as a video game, as an alternative way of playing D&D rather than using the traditional route. So in their perspective, they are trying to bring an entirely new audience into D&D that doesn't play D&D. Sigil is for all those people who play all the hundreds of millions of people that play video games that don't play D&D.
So Fortniters.
People who play Fortnite, people who play Grand Theft Auto. It is a video game to attract video game people. They want people who have never touched D&D to play Sigil as their gateway, because it crosses that threshold. It is a video game more than it is a tabletop D&D game. Play Sigil, and then you'll be interested in maybe buying the books or just playing Sigil. Sigil is not meant to compete. You okay? Sigil is not meant to compete with Roll20 or Foundry or WorldTree. It is a completely separate entity that's designed to go after the video game market. And the analogy that I thought of, what ended up being accurate, is Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering has physical cards you play, and then there's something called Magic Online. And Magic Online is pure and simple, just a digital representation of the physical game. Nothing fancy, nothing goofy. You buy virtual packs, you build virtual decks, you have virtual games with other people. There are different sets of rules. It is a perfect translation, 100% of the physical game with no bells and whistles. I played it for a very long time. I just jumped into Magic Online just recently. It still looks exactly the same, with the exact same format. I can still build my decks. My cards are still there, and it's still there generating revenue for Hasbro. But they continuously been trying to create Magic the Gathering video games for PlayStation, for Xbox, for PC, and there's a bunch of these other variations. And they rise, and then they vanish, and then they come out with a new one. And there's tons of different versions of these online Magic games. But the Magic Online original version is still there because it's a perfect translation of the card game, where all these other video games try to interpret it as more of a video game to play. And that's kind of what we're seeing, where Sigil is this attempt to turn D&D into a more of a video game. And there'll still be these virtual tabletops working that everyone's going to play, that have played the game, that just can't get into a physical room. I find it fascinating that Sigil is not trying to steal people from Foundry or Roll20. They're going after a completely new audience. And as a result, it's not really a threat to these industries because it's not even in the same genre.
I think it makes sense for several reasons. Firstly, because I think it's this Hasbro CEO who came from the video game world, or was it the woman who was sacked from Wizards of the Coast last year, who also came from a video games background? So it doesn't surprise me that they decided to go in that direction. Secondly, it doesn't surprise me because of the pandemic, we have seen an awful lot of people go online and actually enjoy it.
Yeah.
And an awful lot of gaming still happens online. Now, if this becomes a cross-platform that you can use anywhere you go, so for example, if this were to become something that you could play in my Nintendo Switch, that would make it powerful. Because for me, for instance, not that I play it anymore, but if I was a D&D player and I could take my Nintendo Switch to Germany, where I go to Essen in a couple of weeks, so I could still play with my friends, an online game with rich visual assets, I would dive into that in milliseconds.
Hmm.
So from that point of view, I'm not surprised that they're doing it. What surprises me, and this is what makes me a bit, what are they hiding? It sounds too ethical for them. It sounds too good to be true that they're going to do something to take on a different kind of fandom without interfering with the existing fandom or publishers. So I'm a bit, what are we missing here? What haven't we been told?
I think it's more insidious, actually, than you lead on. I think it's not about ethics. I think it's about the fact that Hasbro wants perpetual growth, and they know it's going to be tricky to sell everybody who's on Roll20. Everyone's on Foundry, Fantasy Grounds, D20 Pro, for those 4 people who play it. All the people that are on those systems, all the people who play physical games, saying, hey, abandon everything, play this new fancy thing. And all the people who are 40 years or older are like, no, I'm not going to touch it. They're not, they in order to get growth, in order to make money off of D&D and have that increased revenue, they need more people playing it. And so the solution is go after the audience that they don't have. And the audience they don't have is the video game market. All the 12 to 30-year-olds that have never played D&D, who are aware of D&D but are not interested in it, they want a gateway access to it. That's it. It's not, they don't think there's enough money in us, and they want the kids.
Okay, 2 questions I have. One, is this sigil going to be connected in some way, shape, or form to D&D Beyond?
Yeah, to my knowledge, yes, they are connected.
Okay, so that's the one way that's going to make money. And second, is this going to be a one-off purchase, subscription? What's the pricing going to be like?
Okay, I can, without knowing this for a fact, I'm saying with absolute 100% certainty, it is going to be developed and run exactly like a modern video game, which means there will be subscription packs, there'll be season passes, there will be microtransactions. It will be monetized to death. It'll probably be free to play, and they will make the dungeon maps. You have to pay to get the dungeon maps. You'll have to pay to get the adventures. You have to pay to get skins, pay to get color packs, pay to get certain bells and whistles. Like, they will monetize the visual look of your character. You will not be able to go into a booth and pick and make your character exactly how you want. You have a substandard mini, and if you want him to look exactly how you want your character to look, you better pony up the money, because that's the only way you're going to have it. Because there are so many video games that make all their money off of cosmetics. They are going to cosmetic up Sigil. Sigil is going to be a game that is going to be entirely based around seasonal passes and microtransactions. It'll work exactly like Grand Theft Auto Online, all the other games out there. It's not going to run like Fantasy Grounds or Foundry. It's going to run like a video game.
And one last question that just popped into my mind, which follows on the trend that I was setting about what are they not telling us yet, is how long after they release Sigil, after they incorporate an AI that can run the game for you. So you buy the adventure and you don't have to prepare the adventure. The system will run the adventure for you. How long until that happens?
Probably a year. My guess is because they have talked about that exact thing way back about a year and a half ago. They talked about that exact thing. So I imagine they are dumping a lot of money to remove the Dungeon Master from that equation, because the moment they feel that they have developed an audience, they'll drop that bombshell and say, now you don't need the GM anymore, because at that point, Sigil will just be a video game version of D&D. And this is, by the way, one of the biggest reasons why Baldur's Gate 3 was not allowed to have a custom modded system. Now, the funny thing was, recently as a week ago, somebody figured out that that modding ability is built within the infrastructure of Baldur's Gate 3, and they put out a patch that allows you to do it, which means with very little effort, you can run Baldur's Gate 3 as a virtual tabletop. that uses 5e D&D rules.
Now that would be a beautiful VTT.
Yeah, but the funny thing is that it's funny how someone just figured it out around now.
Casually.
And of course, Baldur's Gate 3, the developers are like, hey, we're not responsible. We didn't do this. Somebody else did it. It's like, yes, but you put the infrastructure and how to do it in the game, and all you needed was a patch.
Larian, you are fucking gods.
Yes. Now, I have not seen applicable application. I haven't seen whether or not this is fully functioning in this fashion, but I wouldn't be surprised that if with a little bit of searching, you can find out how to do it. But apparently, I've been seeing it posted around, people saying that that you can do it, but I haven't seen it in actual action. So if somebody wants to post a link of somebody who has done this and talk about how easy it is, please do so.
Okay, let's finish this this part because I have one because we've been playing, we've been talking for about an hour now. So we're going to go into this one very, very quickly. So humans, don't go away. My friend Dimokritos sent us a few questions. I know that we're meant to be doing, board game reviews, but I haven't played any board games, so I'm sorry I can't do anything at the moment. But I'm going to come with some reviews, RPG reviews, very, very soon indeed. I know that we were going to be doing the game evening advice and recipes and so on and so forth. But these 4 questions, I do like. So, Dimokritos is going to have a Kickstarter campaign for his game, and he wants to make sure that he's doing the best that he possibly can. So he approached me with 1. Should I approach a major pool of smaller YouTubers for paid or non-paid advertising, or focus my budget in 1-2 major 5e professionals? What do you think?
Boy, how much time do I have?
You have like 2 minutes. So
okay. So the answer to the question is, within the board game community, generally people really like a lot of different channels previewing their game. And that's why whenever you go to a board game Kickstarter, you'll see videos from Dice Tower, from Meeples, whatever Meeples is what it was called, and Rado. They'll have a bunch of people because they'll dump a lot of money because they reason people want 6 or 7 versions of the exact same video.
Yes.
But in tabletop role-playing, different scenario entirely. You don't need to have preview videos of how your game is played. There have been $1 million campaigns that have no promotional videos whatsoever. Because at the end of the day, it's a completely different market. So if you have, I would say, if you have a fixed budget, find a handful of people willing to do videos, maybe 1 or 2, and just post it. And that's all you need. You don't need to blow lots of money. It's not like a board game. Tabletop role playing is for some reason is a much. People don't need to have all the bells and whistles. So you don't need to have 14 videos from high profile people. Do 1 or 2. Focus your budget on the best person you can do. Get 1 video. That's fine.
I'm going to say go for as many non-paid YouTubers as you possibly can. Simple as. Get a number of copies that you can send to people. Do some research. Okay, don't just send it anybody. If a YouTuber is used to doing horror role-playing games, and your role-playing game is a fantasy, don't send them your game. They're not gonna do a fucking thing with it. So find people who do reviews that you like, that you enjoy, about games that your game could resonate with them. It takes a while doing it, but they will be very grateful. I know this because I love being a small YouTuber who does this for people I like and talk about those games for a while, because don't expect that unless somebody falls in love completely with your game, don't expect that we're going to be talking about your game forever. We talk about your game for a while, and then we will jump onto the next one because we need to give it to somebody else. But I would find 10 people, 15 people perhaps, who would be willing to do reviews, who would be willing to do interviews, to tweet about it, perhaps play a game, and do it that way. And for the love of all that's holy, okay, none of that is going to make any difference whatsoever to your campaign unless you, the campaign owner, also make some effort in distributing, promoting, not promoting paid, but promoting as in talking about the work that those reviewers are doing for you. We also need that. This is a team effort. So
Yeah.
you need to do that. So yeah, I would say I'm going to go for a mix. Go for one person, perhaps two that you can pay, and then a bunch that you don't have to pay for, and smaller ones. And I think that's the best strategy. Question number 2. On major forums, RPGNet, ROGPub, etc., a single post is visible only from 100 people for a day. Is there ways to achieve better visibility or a spotlight? Yes. Make lots of posts about your game, spark discussion, and add links in your post, and do it tastefully and indirectly. Don't make spammy, but ask people about your game. What would you like to see? Do you like these illustrations, or do you like these ones instead? Would you like this mechanic? I've been thinking about it for the game. Or would you like this one instead? Talk and create community.
EndWorld has you got to pay a little bit. It's not too much, but you can pay to get a publisher account. And when you have a publisher account, you can advertise your product in some of the major forum groups. Otherwise, you're limited to just a independent forum, which not a lot of people visit. But if you pay a little bit, I don't know how much it is, you can post your stuff in other forums, and EndWorld still works like a regular forum. Things aren't retired as quickly. So yeah, go on to our EndWorld, get a publisher account, give Russ a little bit of money, unfortunately, and then you can post a bunch of stuff, and then there you go.
Yeah, but above all, I haven't been in forums for years because, quite frankly, my experience in forums in the past was absolutely horrible. So I can't be asked to go back into that. But take a look, and above all,
I kind of have no choice.
Well, I think the important thing of forums is to create community. So talk about your game, ask people, create a community. Question number 3. I have a steady partnership with a Geek Native. They're good people, so that's absolutely fine. I have built a relationship that they create an article for each of my games. Should I search for more of them, and how? Yes. That ties very nicely with question 1 and 2. Create a community of YouTubers, bloggers that will be willing to give you some air. I always say that I do reviews of indie games, games I like, whether they're indie or not, and my friends. So people like Chris Birch from Modifius, or Kat Tobin from Pelgrane Press, Nicole Lindrus from Green Ronin, Sarah Newton, they are always, no matter what, going to have a space in my channel because they are my friends and I love them dearly. So yes, build that kind of relationship, make agreements. Hey, if I send you this, are you going to make something out of that? What will you do? Is that going to be worth my time and my money? Be honest. But yeah, I think that creating a network of media outlets, whether they're big or small, that will talk about your game for a while, definitely a good idea. As to how to find them, Facebook is your friend.
Yeah. Just be really careful. Like I said, my biggest beef when it comes to them is when you start reaching out to content creators, I'd say they'll string you along, but there's a lot of them will talk about how all the things they can do, and then right at the end they'll say, well, this is how much it costs, and unfortunately I've been seeing the pricing for content creators skyrocket in the last year, which I mean, I understand their motivation and their reasoning, but it's one of those situations where you're like, well, Modifius or some big company will give me $1,500 to advertise their game, so that's how much it's going to cost. I go, yeah, but now you're only going to get that Modifius money, and they'll say that's fine. And like there was one guy, I'm not going to say his name, but when he did a preview video for Naramata, it was like $30. Like, sure, absolutely. And then 2 years later, I asked him what the price is, and the price came up was $300. It literally went up by like 10 times in a span of a couple of years.
And you know what? I understand that. Okay, I'm going to say I understand that because I think it's a lot easier to deal with one customer that will give you $1,500 than having to deal with 5 customers who will give you $1,500.
Yeah.
So I'd rather work once for one chunk of money. Having said that, I don't charge for my content, so I don't know about this. 4th question, for the last. Probably some advertising channels that I have total ignorance and you know they work. Right now, the only advertising channel that really works is Facebook. By magnitudes, is way above and beyond Instagram. Twitter, don't even think about it.
Yeah, there's no engagement on Twitter, unfortunately.
None at all. And if you want to try TikTok, I wouldn't recommend that you do your own advertising. Take some people who will do some TikTok videos for you and pay them to promote their videos.
Yeah.
If you get somebody with, I don't know, 10, 15,000 viewers, and you pay them like, I don't know, a couple of $100 to get them in front of another 30,000 viewers, you are working twofold. You're promoting your game and you're promoting them. They will be happier and you will get a lot more views. What do you think?
Yeah, like I said, it's for me, that's basically, that's how I did Ultramodern. I reached out and I found people that were enthusiastic about the system to do videos, and I appreciate that. Same thing I did when I did Affinity. I got, I asked backers to record themselves doing unboxings and send me the video, and I got cool videos I got to share with people. So yeah.
People usually, if they like you, they will be happy to do things for you. Although, yeah, gaming fandom can be horrific at times. There are an awful lot of very, very good people. If you can tap into them, if you can get them to buy into your project, they will be there for you. People can be wonderful too. So that's what I would do. But in short, Facebook is the best advertising channel at the moment. 5th question that you didn't ask, but yeah, if I had the money, I would probably go on to a marketing expert and ask them to draw a plan for you.
Yeah.
I think that would save you from very, very long hardship. But yeah, that's going to cost you. So it really depends on how much money you have. But then I'm one used to working with very small RPGs that need very little amount of money, and I barely needed any marketing other than the one I was doing to make them work, because I didn't want 100,000. I just wanted 5. So
yeah,
I don't know. But yeah, Dimokritos, this is what you've been waiting me to write down, and I haven't written down because I am an asshole, but you can listen to my voice, and now you can come to me on Facebook and tell me, Paco, thank you, you're an asshole. And I think this is the end of this episode for today.
Yes.
Humans on every single one of those player handbook species. Thank you very much indeed for being there.
Next week, I'll be able to tell you about my review for the Player's Handbook.
I am very, very much looking forward to that. Next, after this episode, and another interview that I've recorded last Saturday with Scott Malthouse is going to be released, where we have spoken about the fear beneath, I think it was, or the terror beneath. I can't remember. I think it's the terror beneath. He's releasing very shortly with Osprey Games, and it is a very, very cool horror folklore game based on the works of Machen. So
based on what?
Machen. It's basically the Welsh author that Lovecraft took inspiration from.
Oh, okay.
He is very much an unknown, and it's a shame because I've never read any of his work. I met his great-granddaughter in a World Fantasy Con in 2013, and she spoke at a panel about the fairies, the weird dangerous, capricious, absolutely horrible fairies that her great-grandfather spoke about and wrote about, and it was absolutely fascinating. So there is now going to be a role-playing game based on all of that, and that's going to be our next episode. Meanwhile, human beings, please send us your comments and your ideas and anything you want to tell us at podcast@gmsmagazine.com. Where you will be most welcome. I promise I will reply, even if it takes me some while, but I shall. You can still find me on Twitter and Facebook at GMS Magazine, and Threads, and Instagram, and TikTok, and everything. So please do say hello.
And this has been Chris from DSX Machina. Find me on all social medias except X, because even though it's there, I don't really check it. DSX Machina on Facebook and dsxmachina.com.
And until the next time, thank you once again for being there. Truly, 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 truly appreciate it. And we will talk to you very, very soon indeed. Take care.
Bye.